Hello and welcome to the Sheff United Way. This is complicated. I don't really pretend that I understand all the things I'm about to say to you, but I'm going to have a go. Let's try together. There'll be people far more intelligent than me watching this who already understand it, already got their heads around it, and you'll probably tell me afterwards that I got a load of stuff wrong. Fair enough. I'll hold my hands up. I'm trying. I'm trying my best, and I do this because I think it'll actually be important for United. It'll be important for a lot of clubs, but I only care about United. And I want to try and get as many people to understand as much of it as we actually can. Even after all this research, I don't pretend to understand. And if you ask me to do a lecture without my notes, I wouldn't be able to. But we're talking about foreign player transfers, understanding GBE and ESC. I know, I hate modern football as much as you do. Brexit, as we know, changed a lot of things, and we won't go into details or my personal thoughts on that because that's not the right thing to do on a football channel. I did leave the United Kingdom 3 years ago, so maybe you can work out your own thoughts. One of the things that changed and which has an impact on the most important thing in all of our lives, which is Sheffield United, is the way that we as a football club, transfers. EU nationals no longer able to freely move to the UK like they were before Brexit. For many years, Sheffield United have focused largely on players born within the confines of a few nearby counties. There were notable exceptions, but now we enter a brave new world, and we probably need to get our heads around it. There's a lot of talk about analytics, data-driven approaches, AI-led scouting. When those systems throw up a name of a player in a far-flung corner of the globe, the next question that our scouting system will have to look at and ask is, can this player be signed? Can they get a work permit? At the time of recording, United have signed 3 players that fall under something called ESC, which stands for Elite Significant Contribution. Those 3 are 𝗣𝗿̇ஹި 𝗲𝗵𝗵, Christian Echukwu, and 𝗍𝗵𝗵𝗵 𝗍𝗍𝗵𝗵. Those are the 3 that we know of. There are rumours of United's interest in Bulgarian, which is 𝗤𝗿𝗿 which would take us up to our 4 allowed ESC slots. They would then all have been used. So what are they and how do they work? And why should we care? Well, because if you've only got 4 and you use all 4, you can't sign any more players of that ilk. They already existed in the GBE option, the GBE criteria, which was introduced in December 2020 ahead of the January 2021 window. That is GBE governing body endorsement. That was for clubs to sign players who met a set of criteria. A player must meet a very specific criteria to obtain a GBE from the FA, which is necessary for the Home Office to actually issue a work permit. A GBE is awarded on the points-based system, and I will give a relevant example to Sheffield United very soon, but a player needs to reach 15 points or get an auto pass, which applies to those that have played a certain percentage of minutes for their national team, which is ranked in the top 50 by FIFA. This includes over 70% of any of the top 50 ranked international teams, or above 30% of minutes for those nations ranked in the top 10. These players are considered sufficient quality to immediately be given a GBE, and they can play football in the UK for a football club, no bother. So that is GBE. It's good, but this limits teams wanting to get up and coming talents. You have to be more established, as we've just explained, to qualify under GBE. With GBE, it's also worth noting, adding that there is an exceptions panel. Players who don't quite meet the points threshold can potentially be granted a GBE through an exceptions panel appeal. With GBE, some markets, they were naturally reduced and some areas opened up. Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico, for example. So the introduction of ESC was necessary, and it meant that players who would previously not have qualified for a GBE would be available under certain circumstances. The ESC legislation means that a team in England can sign a player who does not qualify for a full GBE, i.e., they are not in receipt of an auto pass, or nor do they reach the 15-point threshold. Andy Watson, the GBE and ESC expert, says, we expect if the 𝗤𝗿𝗿𝗵𝗵𝗹 signing, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, is confirmed, Sheffield United will have used all 4 ESC slots. any player who gets a GBE auto pass or earns 15 GBE points through the FA criteria can still be signed by the Blades. Oliver Antman, for example, would still be able to get signed. He gets 10 league quality points as his league is in Band 2. And it's Band 1 to 5 that you need. 8 domestic minutes points, 78% at Band 2. 2 international points, 100% available appearances for Finland, who are interestingly ranked at 66th, just out of that, but 20 points overall. Pow, that's enough. He wouldn't need Oliver Antman or Antman or Antman. I'm not sure how it's said. I haven't got to my research for him yet, but he wouldn't need an ESC slot. There's an example of how GBE works, it's just explained there, and I promised I would get to that, and I hope it's both helpful and gives hope for future signings that aren't ESC. But if we go back to that, ESC, each club in the top 4 divisions has a limited number of slots for these ESC signings. The Premier League and the Championship get 4. Now, I could go into the others, but there's no point. Let's look at the criteria to get an ESC. So played in at least 1 competitive youth or senior international match for a FIFA top 50 ranked nation. Played in at least 5 competitive youth or senior international matches for a non-top 50 ranked nation. Played in at least 1 continental youth or senior competition match. Played in at least 5 domestic youth or senior competition matches. An important note as well, all of the domestic clauses require the club to be in bands 1 to 5. Okay, that's ESC criteria. This means that a player that is playing in youth competitions or even senior competitions in the likes of Finland or Canada or Peru or any other country that is band 6 still doesn't qualify for an ESC automatically. However, if that youngster played competitive internationals for their country's youth team, then they could qualify through that route. It's all a little complicated. A player can be converted to full GBE status. They could be an ESC and then they could become GBE after 1 transfer window. So if a player is signed in the summer and they then play a lot of minutes or play for their national team, they could be converted in the following February. The player, need to get those crucial 15 points in the GBE calculations, or as I mentioned, has played enough international football to receive an auto pass, or if the player has played a certain percentage of minutes for their club. This obviously didn't happen last season with Cáceres or 𝗏𝗏𝗏, but if the criteria were met, you then open up another ESC slot. Again, you could sign another player that doesn't quite meet the GBE criteria. I hope all of this is making sense. All of this, for me anyway, quite complicated. I get that the overarching idea here and the reason these are put into place is actually to protect the national game, to protect the number of players that are eligible to play for England. And let's touch on EQP, as that now feels timely after what I've just said. EQP, this acronym stands for England Qualified Players. Basically, anyone who would qualify to play for England if selected. Weighted EQP minutes percentage is calculated using cumulative EQP minutes, non-EQP minutes, and the total of minutes from each EQP qualifying match. Now, an EQP qualifying match simply means a match played in the Premier League, the Championship, League 1, League 2, Champions League, certain stages of the FA Cup or League Cup. 50% of minutes played by an England qualified player of the club that has been loaned to another club will also be added to the club's cumulative EQP and total minutes. Then the final weighted EQP minutes percentage is found by using this formula: cumulative EQP minutes divided by cumulative total minutes times 100 equals weighted EQP minutes percentage. Why is that important? Why am I going through that? It sounds ridiculously hard to understand, and it is. Well, because ESC places will be determined by the statistics of weighted EQP minutes percentage. Any reduction in ESC slots, which can happen, will not impact the players already at the club taking up an ESC slot, but you could lose them. Teams will need to give English talent minutes and have to use their ESC slots wisely and plan for the number of ESC slots that they have, with the possibility that they could only have 1 in the future if the number of minutes for EQP is lower than 20%. And if you're interested, because we'll be talking, I'm sure, in the future with players that will be linked to, foreign youth players, a foreign youth player by this set of documentation's definition is a player born on or after the 1st of January 2002. In previous legislation, clubs would have been able to take their case to an exceptions panel to prove that the player was capable of making a significant contribution as a result of their precocious talent. ESC, GBE, and the thing I really hate now, EQP. I've tried my best to lay it all out there. I hope it makes sense. I hope it makes sense to you. There will be a test later. Thanks very much for watching.
𝗚𝗿𝗲𝗷𝗚